Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for your patience as we get ready for today's TexTalk webinar. Today's topic is going to be buying and selling your home. I am your guest host, Josh Franzen, here with Texans Credit Union, and I am joined by Brandon Shears and Ebby. I'm trying to pronounce this.
Adeshegun.
Both are peers of mine. All three of us went through Leadership Richardson together, class 41, best class ever. Thank you to the Richardson Chamber for connecting all of us so that we could prepare this webinar for all of you today. Before we get started, I'll just go through a couple of housekeeping things, and then we'll read a lovely little disclosure, and then I will turn it over to our experts here today. We are recording this webinar, so we will be able to share it later. So if you come in late or have to miss part of it, or maybe something happened, this will be available later on the Texans YouTube page later in June or early July. We will have a portion for Q&A. Please use the Q&A feature at the top. If you put it in chat, we may not get to it just because we want to make sure that all those questions are recorded in the Q&A section. So please start there, and then that's where we'll start. And if we have time and we have any that got into the chat by accident, or the Q&A wasn't work for you and you put it in the chat, we'll get to those. Other than that, we'll go ahead and get started here. So thank you all for joining us again today. We appreciate you giving up your time to be here with us. As we move forward, please be aware that the content shared in this webinar should not be considered as financial, investment, or tax advice. Before making any investment or financial decisions, please seek advice from professionals like personal financial advisors, tax advisors, or other experts who can provide guidance tailored to your specific financial situation. Any insurance products are not insured by the NCUA and are not a deposit product or obligation of or guaranteed by Texans Credit Union. By registering for this webinar, you consent to sharing your information with the event organizers and/or presenters. You also agreed to receive communications from Texans Credit Union, its partners, and adhere to the Texans Credit Union social media and privacy policies insured by NCUA Equal Housing Opportunity, NMLS number 530654. Whew. Try saying all that under one breath, y'all. That's a
You did great.
mouthful there. All right, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. We're going to kick it over to Ebby, who is going to start us off, and she is going to walk us through the home buying process. So we're starting off with buying a home, whether it's your first home, a new home to you, whether you're the first-time home buyer or you haven't bought a home in a while. This is the information you're going to need to know. So, turning it over to Ebby.
Thank you so much, Josh, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Like you said, I am Ebby Adeshegun with Ebby Holiday Realtors. I'm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, primarily on the Dallas side, and I'm just a huge advocate for home ownership. My preference is to focus on the education side of home ownership. I think there's a lot of nuances when it comes to buying a home, and my goal is to always advocate for my clients and to make sure that they're understanding what each stage of the process is. So that's what we'll really focus on today. So I want you to leave today with a kind of solid basic storyline of what the buying a home process looks like. So we'll get started. Okay, first, can I actually buy a home? So when you're thinking about buying a home, I don't want you to feel like you're buying it alone. I like to use the word advocates. You have advocates that will support you throughout the home buying journey, and these advocates each are each a party of the transaction. And so the goal is that each party understands their involvement in the transaction. So my first step that I always encourage people to do is to contact the realtor. When you contact the realtor first, you get access to all their preferred advocates, and that's the lender, title company, home inspector, insurance agent. And so you don't kind of have to feel burdened with going and saying, okay, who's the best person that could walk me through this journey? And then I think another good thing about starting with a realtor is, contrary to popular belief, is when you are thinking about buying a house and you reach out to us, you don't have to be ready to buy a house right then and there. I love to hear your dreams, your thoughts, maybe your fears, maybe things you've heard online, seen on Google, TikTok, things like that. So just to have that initial conversation, I always say, let's just start with the realtor. And then from there, we can roadmap out what those next steps would look like. So what does that first stage look like? So you've contacted your realtor, you've told them your dreams, your thoughts. What does it look like next if you want to continue going through that home buying process? So a common term that's shared is getting pre-approved. I like this part of the transaction because you kind of get a nice game plan for financing your home purchase. Number one, meeting with the lender to get pre-approved is free. Unless there's another lender I don't know about, you don't have to pay any money. So it's a free opportunity to sit down with the lender. Takes maybe about 30 minutes, max an hour of your time to kind of sort out what does that look like to finance a home purchase. Another thing I like outside of it being free is that you get a personal guidance. We can Google things like, okay, should I pay off this credit card to get pre-approved? Google said it did. Google said I should. Reddit should said I should. But instead of having that, you have your own personal person who will also keep it private and tell you and give you a game plan of if you want to buy a house, what does it look like? Do certain things need to take place? So I think that's just a great stage. I love it. And then a cool fact, though, is you don't have to get a hard credit pull when you meet with the lender. It's soft credit. So you're not paying anything. I think the only cost here that you have to keep in mind is just setting out that time to meet with the lender. We can do in person, we can do lunch, or you can do it over the phone too. So that's going to be the first stage we knock out. After you move forward or think about getting pre-approved is the fun part. Now, home shopping is a lot of fun. I don't know about any of you all, but I am a shopping addict. So it's just fun because you get to go out there and you get to see what's actually available. And the nice part about getting pre-approved is when you have gotten pre-approved, your realtor can keep into account everything that the lender gave us. So they're going to give us your price point, and we can talk about that. Make sure you're comfortable with it. They talk about it from overall sales price perspective, but also a monthly payment perspective. So sometimes I think it's easier to hear if you go with this sales price, you'll be paying this certain amount each month, as opposed to just having that big ticket item because it's kind of hard to break it down. At least for me, that's just my preference. But once you have that in hand, we'll meet and we'll do what I call two buckets. We have your must-have ideas and we have your nice-to-have. Your must-haves are your non-negotiables. If you want to be within a certain school district, if you want to be within a certain commute for work, if you have to have a certain number of bedrooms, that is what we're going to have in the first bucket. And then we have a second bucket that I call the nice to haves. And those you can kind of put maybe your wildest dreams on there and stuff like, okay, I want a pretty patio, but I want it to be covered and I want it to have a ceiling fan, or I want the option to maybe build a pool or have a pool. We can have it in that bucket. So we'll keep true and we'll use kind of like the must-haves as our number one priority, but then we still keep that second bucket because if we're looking at a house and maybe you're stuck between two, we can kind of revisit that nice to have and say, okay, maybe this first house aligned with more of our nice to haves as opposed to the second one. And that could kind of maybe help make the decision a little bit easier. I think also having these two buckets prevents what I call analysis paralysis. We have a lot of homes on the market in the DFW Metroplex and beyond. And I think seeing too many can get overwhelming. Like, you know what, I don't even know which one to choose. So I say having those buckets keeps you focused, gives us a game plan, and kind of helps us get that initial pool of homes that we can preview that will, I guess, touch on some of your wants and needs. So the next part. So we've been home shopping and you found the home that you love, the one that we're calling V1. Now our next step is to communicate that interest to the sellers. We're going to do what is called make an offer. Now, making an offer, there's several components, but I just pulled a couple that I wanted to talk about that you'll kind of see throughout transactions, and each one is different. So this is not all encompassing. It's just some kind of key terms that you'll see throughout that I want us to just get comfortable with. And we can define them later on as well. but I put in a couple parts. So in the offer letter, we'll talk about the purchase price. And that's nice because normally our purchase price is going to be in the budget that that lender gave us, which is again why we do that as our first step of getting pre-approved. The next part is we'll put earnest money and option fee. Now, these two are separate from your down payment. Depending on the loan type that you get into will determine your down payment. And when I talked earlier about those advocates and about a lender, I'm gonna Abby's gonna stay in a realtor lane, and then the lender will stay in their lane. So we don't have to take this time to kind of break down different loans. And I think Texans Credit Union is amazing too, and they'll be able to speak to some of the loans that they offer. But we will leave that to our lender advocate to kind of help us there. But when we're thinking about the earnest money and option fee, these are kind of good faith items that you put down to tell the seller, like, hey, I do like this home and I'm serious about it. And typically the earnest money is about 1% of the sales price. And the beauty of that is, as we're going through the home buying process, we'll get into it. We'll talk more details about timelines, but there's a certain period of time that if you put down this earnest money, you decide that this is not the house for you, it can be refundable, but it'll be in a certain timeline, which we'll talk about. The next part is the option fee. We try to keep that fee low when we can, but that's a part of the offer letter that we can always discuss, like if we want to put something higher or lower. But the option fee just is putting down money for the option period for you to review all the ins and outs about the house. So a typical number could be like a week. So for a week, we can maybe do $100, $200. And we're saying during that time, we have a week where they've accepted our offer, and we can look through and make sure that this is the right home. We can have all of our inspections done. We can have a roofer come out. Anything about the house you want to know about is what we focus on and prioritize during those 7 days. And so again, that will be the option fee. The next part of the offer, you also put in a closing date. I just use the general closing day. It could be 30 days, but it can be as quick as the lender can make it for us. And that's when we keep your goals in mind. So if you're saying, hey, like if you're renting, for example, and you're saying, hey, my lease is up maybe in 35 days as opposed to 30 days, then we can just have that incorporated into the offer letter. All these things can be based off of your exact transaction and your exact goals. And then I put in another part because, again, I'm speaking from the home buyer perspective, is we could have what's called seller concessions or seller contributions. And it's basically asking for the seller to take a portion of their proceeds and put it towards your closing costs. So if closing costs is something that is holding you back from, I guess, purchasing the home, that's a conversation we can have. So let's see how we can sort that out through the offer process and maybe get that number a little bit lower for you. I think another thing that's helpful, I'm going to revisit because we're like doing a little bit of a storytelling. When I talked about at the beginning about getting a pre-approval letter, there's a part and when we're drafting our offer where we'll talk about the financing portion and just being able to say, hey, my client has been pre-approved, and the lender can call and say, hey, this person has been pre-approved, just kind of makes it a stronger offer because you've already done all the financials. So let's say you saw that beautiful home and somebody else also put an offer in. And let's say all of our terms are the same, but the only difference was you've been pre-approved and they haven't. I can't speak to the seller, but it just makes you a little bit stronger because you don't have to go and do that checks and balances. So it's like get that hard, or what's called the quote unquote hard part, done first. And then it makes it a little bit smoother. And I don't consider it hard because you get to know, again, what's best for you. It's so comforting looking at a home, knowing that, hey, I know that this falls in my budget. I know I'm comfortable with the monthly payment. I know I'm comfortable with the fees associated with purchasing this home. I think that takes a little bit of the anxiety away. I'm not saying it's going to take all, but it just helps kind of, I think, settle you. And I say this from a realtor perspective because as realtors, our job is to help put together an offer that makes it competitive, but also is on par with how the market looks. Okay, next. So we put in an offer, they've accepted it, and we talked about those terms of some components of what goes into an offer. Now we're under contract. So on the previous slide, I did mention there were some terms. So I just want to go ahead and take just a little brief moment to kind of define some of those terms you saw previously. So we talked about earnest money. It shows your commitment to purchasing the home. It's separate, again, from the down payment. But if you proceed with the house, it goes towards your closing costs. So it's just nice because all of this is being credited towards the day that you're going to go to closing, sign your documents, and get your keys. And it's good faith money. The next is the option fee. And so during this option period, you can do any inspections. And it's also nice for the sellers too, because again, the home is off the market. They're not letting anybody else view the home. It's just you. So it's also just good faith money. Like it's saying, hey, while it's off the market, I'm committing this additional funds to have the house inspected. If you go through with the home purchase, it's still credited towards closing. If not, it's okay. That's why we communicate during the option fee and say like, hey, what's a number comfortable with that if we walk away from the home, the sellers do get to keep it, but if they're not keeping it, you're kind of just doing your due diligence. And if it wasn't a home for you, you're not out that entire down payment that you were going to put down towards the house. The next is the home inspection. And so that's where you're going to get a good understanding of the home's condition. So again, we were talking earlier about our home buying advocates. We will trust the inspector to look at the condition of the home. Now, as realtors, we can go through anything visible we see, we can call out, we're looking for those things, maybe cracks, things missing, doors not fully closing. But Evie is not skilled at getting on a roof. There are more people capable of getting on a roof, and we want them to, so you can see the condition of that. And so that's when we'll lean on our inspector advocate to do that. They'll go look at the house, they'll give us a report, and then we can look at it. And the beautiful thing is when you get a report, there's kind of three options you can do there. One, you can look at the report and say, looks good to me. I'm comfortable with everything I'm seeing on the report. I'm going to choose to proceed with continuing the home purchase here. The second thing we can do is, and this is if applicable because every house is different, everything in real estate, please keep that in mind, outside of certain timelines is negotiable. So if you see something in the report that maybe gave you a little pause or that you're not comfortable with, or you're saying, hey, I want these repairs done, or I want to discuss the cost related to the repairs, that's something we can still do. That's the beauty of the option period. Conversations don't just stop after you put in an offer letter. They're had all the way up until closing. So that's also an opportunity to negotiate there. And then the last option is you can just see the report and say, you know what, this is not the home for me. We can terminate. You've received your earnest money back as long as it's within that option period timeline that we've agreed upon. And that's something we'll discuss. And you can get your earnest money back and our home shopping journey continues. So there's just different routes you can make based off of what that report is going to give us. And then the last is the appraisal. Now, I just want us to look, the only takeaway I want you to get from the slide about the appraisal is the definition. We'll talk about it further on the next slide, but an appraisal is just an independent estimate of the home's value. As a realtor, I legally can't say this house is worth X, Y, and Z. I can pull what's called comparables and show you what the market might say, what I think is a good guesstimate of what I believe the house could be worth, but we leave it up to the appraisal, a skilled third-party inspector who will say, according to their criteria, this is what the house is worth, which is super helpful too. So they're another advocate as well, and that's great. Okay, the next part is what can impact your closing costs. So I'm keeping this from the perspective that you are still proceeding with the home purchase. So we've gotten our inspection report, we've negotiated, we had whatever necessary conversations that needed to take place. And now we're on our route to closing. So there's a couple things. We talked about the earnest money, we talked about option fees, we talked about inspections, and we dabbled a little bit about appraisals. But let's talk a little bit more here. And I want you guys to keep in mind, my goal is not to teach closing costs. I just set expectations of what you can expect to see from closing costs. We'll lean on and I'm going to keep saying it, advocates. I love saying that word, but we'll lean on our lender and our title company advocates to really be able to break down those closing costs because that's their wheelhouse. As your realtor, I will always stay in touch. That's a part of our job, to stay in touch with the lender and the title company. So that way, as you're going along, you know what those closing costs are looking like. Well, you don't get to the end of the table and then you hear like, hey, you need this large deposit now to get the keys. That's just something that we're discussing all the way from the beginning when we started talking with the lender and getting you pre-approved. So now I did promise to talk more about the appraisals, and that's what I want to lean on. In most transactions, buyers, you can expect to pay the appraisal fee upfront. It's paid upfront during the loan process, but you're going to see it credited at at closing. You'll see all the costs you did. You'll see your earnest money, your option fee, the appraisal fee. That's all going to be a part of what's called a closing disclosure, and it's just kind of like your receipt on closing day when you're getting your keys, like your proof that where has my money gone and how has that been labeled. So while it is an upfront expense, it helps the lender confirm that the home is worth the amount that they're lending. So that's a great feeling because you've gotten this home, they're giving you the money for it. You don't want to get caught in the home and then they come back years later and say, oh no, it's worth X, Y, and Z. So kind of having that appraisal is just like another advocate, another safety net that a third party, somebody who's not related to me, the lender, they're completely neutral. They've come in and kind of help set the standard there of what the house is worth. So that's very comforting to have. And closing costs, they're just expenses associated with purchasing a home. What your costs are depends on your property and loan program, but again, that's why we have our advocates, me as a realtor, the lender, that will help you understand what to expect. Now, the beautiful thing is when you're talking about closing costs, this is where that seller contributions, that portion we saw from the offer letter comes in. When you're meeting with the lender initially and we're looking at a certain sales price and you're seeing that closing cost, if you're seeing it and you're saying, hey, I'm not comfortable with this number, I'd be comfortable with this number if it's here. That's something that we, again, include in the offer letter too. So seller contributions can help get those closing costs down. And I think it's just very comforting to hear because we see it all over and people say, like, buying a house, it's expensive. Of course, it's a huge asset and it's also an emotional investment. But if that's something that the seller can help with, everybody wins because when somebody puts the house on the market, their goal is to sell that house. And when somebody's looking for a home on the market, their goal is to buy that house. So essentially, we are a team trying to reach the same goal. So that's a conversation and that's a piece of the offer letter that we can negotiate. Okay, we're nearing the end. So we're talking about the final stretch to closing. And this is just kind of a solid timeline of what that stretch to closing looks like. And every situation is different. So there may be changes, but this is kind of like a good reference tool to have. So after the home inspection, that's when you have your appraisal. I think it's great to have the appraisal after because I don't think you should have the appraisal while you're having the inspections done. Let's do the inspections to make sure, like, yes, this is the house you want. You're comfortable with the condition of the house. You know what that looks like. And so now you have your appraisal ordered. After your appraisal's ordered and that looks good, the lenders said we're aligned. You know what the house is worth. You get a copy of the appraisal report too, which is nice to have handy. The next part is the lender doing the final review of your home loan. And that's when you're going to see that credit pull. But now you've had the expectations like, hey, my credit's being pulled. And so you don't have it when you were initially first talking to a lender. So I always tell people, I don't fear the lender. They're super helpful. We can stress them out. We can call them. They love that. They love questions. So this is the part where they'll do that kind of final review and you'll see that pull. The next part is homeowners insurance, and that's when you kind of secure that policy. And I do just want to take us back a little bit. So when we were talking about that option period and how we're doing home inspections, I'm a big advocate for starting to get quotes from the home insurance agent because they're one of our other advocates too. Homeowners insurance, I think having that exact number and knowing what the cost would be to have homeowners insurance is just think comforting because it changes based on the property. So let's say you're choosing between two properties and one, the homeowners insurance is maybe it's skyrocketed compared to another one. If that could be a decision that helps you find the right home for you, the most affordable home for you, the one that you're comfortable with, I think it's good to bring them in sooner rather than later. They're another free person that we're going to touch base with when you're just getting quotes. It costs $0 and we can make the call together. I advocate with my clients. I will be with you. A beautiful thing we have here at Ebby Halliday is that our homeowners insurance is in-house. So I'm in the office right now and my homeowners insurance guy is right across. So when I get questions, I love the fact that I can get up, go over a walk and talk with him and just kind of get that quick response. I think that's also very helpful. But right here, when we're looking at the final stretch to closing, this is when you're going to kind of secure that policy. You've seen which one you like, and this is when you're getting a quote, and you've gotten your quote, and you know what your premium will be. The next is the final walkthrough, and that is just that's just a great feeling. Right there is there's not really much homework there. It's kind of the fun part. You get to walk through the home and we're just making sure it's like a checks and balances system. We're making sure that everything that we agreed upon between us and the seller is there. So if they said, hey, they're giving us a fridge, we're making sure that fridge is there. If they're saying, hey, we repaired maybe a sink, we're making sure that sink is repaired. So it's just a nice time for us to be able to walk through the house and you just get that last feeling looking around, knowing, wow, the next time I'm in here, I'll be moving in, I'll be having the keys. So I think that's just kind of like a fun day. But again, that's just kind of like our checks and balances. Um, uh, let's see. Sorry, my thing froze. Okay. And now, once we've approved of the final walkthrough, next is closing day. That's very exciting. We celebrate, we eat, we drink, we be merry. And that's when you're gonna, as some would say, sign your life away, but it's not. You'll do a lot of signing and you receive the keys. And that's just a great feeling. I love seeing that. I love seeing you all with your keys in the hand. And it's just beautiful because it started off as this dream. You were talking, and it's vulnerable to share that you want to buy a home and you don't know where to start, but it's beautiful. I encourage you all share your dreams, and it's just nice because it's just such a surreal moment. I don't think I've been to a closing where I didn't cry. Like, I've been teased by a title company. They were like, "Who do we give the keys to?" And I was like, "Wait, it's their keys." But it's just beautiful to see. So yes, that's an amazing day. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to keep a couple reminders in because we talked about closing day. My goal as your realtor is to help us get there. I want to avoid as many hiccups as that we can control. I'm not in control of everything, but we learn what to expect and how we can set you up for success. So I always encourage keeping your credit activity to a minimum or as consistent as possible. So you're a day away from getting the keys and you are out home shopping, furniture shopping, you see this beautiful couch and you're like, you know what? Let's just charge it. I just ask that if you're going to make any purchase, any major purchase, and major can be different for everybody. If it's a purchase that you're not generally making out of your account, just call me. You don't have to call the lender, just call me. Like, I think there's no harm in just pick up the phone, call, shoot a text, hex and bird mail, and just say, hey, Ebby, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. Would this impact my credit profile? Because the last thing we want is there to be unexpected credit activity and then the lender didn't know, and that could delay your closing. I'm trying to make sure you get those keys in hands on the day, the keys in your hand on the day that we agreed upon. So we want to keep credit activity to a minimum. So you don't have to be married to this list of like, okay, I can't do X, Y, and Z. Don't think of it like that. Just say, okay, if I'm making a purchase I normally wouldn't, let me just call Ebby. My phone is always on. And that's all I can say about that. So just keep that in mind. And so here I just wanted to share some of my contact information. Again, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Texans Credit Union, just for this opportunity. I love talking about home ownership. And again, my favorite part is the education aspect of it, outside of seeing you all with your keys. There is no crazy question. This is a huge investment. This is a lot of times this is people's biggest asset. And not only is it a financial investment, it's an emotional one. Let's talk through that. And I wanted to make sure that it's a good process for you. You hear things about the home buying journey, and my goal is to always have you all smiling, like one of my beautiful clients in the picture here. So please feel free to reach out, email, phone, social media, around the community. I'm always here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebby. Appreciate that. And Ebby's contact information will be up again on another slide, as well as Brandon's. And speaking of Brandon, uh, he is up next. So we bought a home, you've been in it for a while, something's come up, and now you're looking to sell, or maybe you're ready to sell. And that's where Brandon is going to come in and walk us through that process and what that looks like. Because I have heard from a lot of not just our members, but people out and about in the community when I'm out there, they're like, hey, I'm an empty nester, I'm ready to downsize, or I'm ready to purchase a smaller property because I don't need all this space anymore. So this is also a very hot topic that doesn't get as much attention as the buying process, but there are some big things with sellers. So with that, I will kick it over to Brandon.
All right. Thanks so much, Josh. Am I on? You got me?
You are on.
All right. All right. Well, thanks so much. Yeah. Love to talk to you guys about the selling process. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. I think there's so much that goes into the selling process. And I typically talk to my potential sellers for about 90 minutes plus on this. So I'm going to try real hard to condense it down into the next 30 or so, and try to give you some of the biggest takeaways that I think is important for you to know as you plan to sell your home. And let me get my screen up and going here. And that way you guys can see what I'm talking about. It should be coming up here. As we practiced this yesterday, I told Josh, I was like, I just want to make sure I got everything going so that I don't sit there and make everyone wait on my screen and look exactly what I'm doing right now. So, all right, I think I got it going here.
Oh, I was going to say, if not, Brandon, I got you covered.
Okay. Oh, no, I'm sharing my own screen now. Yeah. So let's stop that. Stop sharing. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess just kick them on if you can, Josh, because I thought I was doing it, and I don't think because you can't see the slides right now, right?
No, but let me fix that for you. There you go.
There we go. Thank you, sir. All right. So we can move on to the next slide and kind of get the basically my overview of what I'm trying to do for you guys. Basically explain the home selling process and timeline, the costs that are associated with selling your homes, probably the number one question I get from my sellers, a little bit of perspective on the sales contract, and a few mistakes to avoid. And so some of these slides I'll rip through, and some of them I'll spend more time on, but let's go to the next and get this thing going. So first and foremost, why do people sell? Upgrading for more space is number one. Typically families that need more bedrooms. As Josh mentioned, downsizing is another huge one. Relocating and job placement is huge, especially here in DFW, as we got so many companies and families coming in. A lot of families want to realize their equity gains, sell the house, and use those gains on either more property or projects and whatnot. And then a shift in family dynamics. And the reason I cover these is obviously you know what your situation is, and that situation is going to really dictate a lot of the strategy that we use to sell your home. Because there's a lot of, for me anyways, a lot of data and analytics and strategy that go into selling your home. And it's really tailored and crafted to you as a seller, what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to go. And so all of that needs to be analyzed, as early as possible in the process, hopefully months before you're actually planning on listing. And so I talk to clients from 6 months out, a year and a half out, people that know there's going to be a change in the future. And we go ahead and we start building that timeline right then and there so that you've got all your ducks in a row for as that time approaches. We can go to the next slide on selling process. So we'll stop down on a few of these, but wanted to give you that overarching look at number one, hire a realtor. In fact, interview multiple realtors. Unless it's me, then don't interview anybody else. Just kidding. No, I encourage people to look at multiple realtors because we are all very different in what we offer. We're all different experience levels, different strategies, different ways we do business. So I encourage you to interview at least 2 or 3. That way you know what you're getting and can kind of help differentiate, right, what kind of products and services you're getting from one versus the other. So hire that realtor, sign an agreement with them, and then determine price and prepare the home, which your agent would be key in helping you with. Launch that property, make sure that you've got a very successful launch. And then obviously offers start coming in. You have that option period that Ebby mentioned, which is so crucial to both the buyer and the seller, because once that's your period to get out of there for any reason. After option, buyer and really seller doesn't have a whole lot of options. That transaction is pretty much going to be going through, unless step 6, appraisal and final loan approval. That as a seller, like that's your kind of last time that you're holding your breath, because even then, you know, unfortunately, even days and weeks before closing, if the appraisal doesn't come back well or the final loan approval doesn't get approved with the buyer, that's a reason to terminate, and now we're back to square one. So with that in mind, when we're choosing offers in that step 4, what kind of loan they have and what kind of company they're using, the lender they're using, their financial situation is all very, very important, because those are things that may make or break the deal later in the transaction. And obviously, as a seller, you do not want to go back to market, right? You want to make sure that you will have as much confidence as humanly possible in that contract when you sign it the first time. But then after that, it's closing day and it's time to celebrate. That's always the best day. So yeah, that's a quick overview. We'll move on to the next and see. We've got determining your home market value. So one of my questions for you to think about is, do you believe that your home will sell at a fixed price, or do you believe that it sells within a range of value dependent on the skills of your realtor? And hopefully the answer that comes to your mind is the latter, because a home's sales price, there's so many factors that influence where a house will sell. The agent is a big part of that. And then, of course, economics, market, neighborhood, all that influence it as well. So I say all of that to remind you that your comparative market analysis, your recent comparable sales, your active neighborhood competition, local market conditions, adjustments for the condition of your home. And I'm talking about your upgrades, the things that you haven't upgraded, that one back room that looks like it's from 1975, you know, all of those things go into your sales price. And so you have to make sure that your agent is able to analyze and synthesize all of that data and give you a really good idea of where that sales price needs to be for you, that listing price rather needs to be for you to be the most successful. And online estimates there at the end, can definitely be a bit off. And so I always just make a little PSA about that, because you see the Zillow's estimate and you see Realtor.com, you see all of these online presences. The problem with that is they don't always have the most accurate data, and they even have a few pages on their website, if you look for it, that shows their percent margin that they're typically off. And so they can be a great starting point, but I would just make sure you don't take that as the gospel, you know, versus what an agent and the data that an agent's able to provide for you. And so next, I have a couple of slides just showing you a little bit on how I draw data, but every one of us is different. But I have a scattergram that I use that shows on the next slide the kind of your neighborhood, and I pull data for the past 2+ years on your neighborhood as well, rather than just looking at the last 6 months or the last year. Josh, could you move to that next slide? And basically I'll form basically a line of delineation there in the middle on the left, where you can see, okay, all the little blue dots are the homes that have sold. And then we're able to really analyze that data and find out, okay, if this is your neighborhood and you see on the bottom is square footage and on the left side is property price, where you see where all these houses are landing. So if you have let's say a 3,500 square foot home, you can find that 3,500 there at the bottom, move it right up to where it meets the red line. And we can say, okay, for this neighborhood, 3,500 square feet should get you right there at that 460,000. That's the range we should be looking in. I think I said it before, but I just rely on data a lot. When I got first into the business 5 years ago, it was like I had to rely on data because I felt, had imposter syndrome, and I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But that reliance on data has really served me well through the past 5 years, because the data doesn't lie. The data is objective. It's not subjective. And so I still rely on it to this day because I think it's the smartest way to price your home, because pricing is just so important. You also get data like this on the right that I pull on, what's the likelihood that we're going to sell? How many homes are under contract? How many are for sale? How many didn't sell? How many fell off the market? Everything like that. All of those things really serve well to give you expectation on what to expect, for your property. So next slide is timing your sale. And so I'll just go real quick through this. If you don't already know, spring and summer is selling season, fall and winter, buying season. I tell all of my buyers, I'm like, you want a deal? Let's go hunting on December 22nd, or something like that, because the inventory goes down in the winter and therefore prices go down. Buyers can get really good deals. So if you're on the other side, you're selling your home, you really want to hit that spring market season, March, April, May, and into June, July, August as well. But as you go throughout the year, throughout the summer, that buying pool tends to shrink as people that were looking have already found and got under contract. So if you're really looking to get the most competition, which is obviously what you want, because you want multiple offers, you want all sorts of eyeballs and feet inside the room of your home, then to get you the best price, seasonality matters. A lot of that's around the school calendar for families that are looking, and yeah, that's all I'll say about that. We'll move on. I have a slide here on months supply of inventory. This is just to really show you, this is an important stat to know, because when you're selling your home, you want to know, is this a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? A lot of y'all probably remember the chaos of post-COVID 2021, 2022. You put a sign in the yard and you got 18 offers by Friday night, and it was absolutely bonkers. That's because we had no inventory, right? There was, thousands and thousands of buyers with hundreds and hundreds of homes. And so as we've recovered from that, and now you can see in this line here, this shows months of inventory. Month supply of inventory is basically, let's just take a snapshot of every home on the market for sale right now. Let's do some math on what's the average days on market in this location. And then you get this graph here and you see how many months it would take to sell all of the current inventory in DFW. So this is all the inventory for North Texas. And so you can see back in the very beginning, low part of the graph is January of 2023. We had about 2.5 months of inventory, which is incredibly low, because historically 6 months of inventory is what they call market equilibrium, meaning that the seller nor the buyer have any advantage in negotiation. So we have been in the most historic seller's market of all time, actually, and we have been slowly recovering and heading back toward a buyer's market. But the very end of the graph is today. And so you can see we are at about 5 months, just under 5 months of inventory. So that's great. That means we're still in a seller's market, even though you've been saying, oh, the houses are on longer on market these days, and buyers have the advantage, and they have more of an advantage than they did, but we're still very much in a seller's market. And so sellers should have the leverage in most of these negotiations. So I always let my sellers know this stat as well, just because it's important for you to know kind of where you're at in the market. On the next slide, I'll go quick through this one. Obviously, you want to make your home like a magazine. When you're getting ready to sell, you're getting ready to take photos and all of that. You want to declutter, you want to get a deep clean, do the paint, do the landscaping, put fresh mulch in your yard right before the photos, do all the little small repairs and the maintenances, the little squeaky doorknob, the little sticky door, the little crack in the fireplace or on the tile floor or whatever. Get all of that taken care of. The little handyman kind of repairs that you will make before the sell are going to save you thousands afterwards, because buyers are going to find those things along with a lot of other stuff you don't even know is there. And then you're going to be you're going to be making all these seller concessions for the repairs that need to be done. So do it ahead of time, because at the bottom point there, the main goal is to remove distractions from the buyer. When a buyer comes into the home, all you want them to say is ooh and ah. They see that crack, they're like, uh-oh, foundation issues. I can't tell you how many times I hear that. They see this little crack in the wall, they're like, that's a foundation issue. Not necessarily, right? But if it's there, that's what they're going to think. So whether the foundation repair is needed or not, it's already in their mind. And now it's that little bug that they can't get out of there. So as a seller, you want to remove any and all distractions from that buyer, because I guarantee you those distractions build and they build and they build throughout their tour. And as they go home and as they think about your house and as they compare it to all the other houses they saw, you know, these little things. In fact, I had a buyer just a few months ago and we walked into a living room that had the big painted mural on it, right? Green, yellow, red, blue, this giant mural. It was beautiful, but my buyers just, it was like a bug light. They were just staring at it and they were like, what is this? Why is this happening? Right? And I was like, I can't tell you. I gave up guessing a long time ago. But they didn't, I mean, they didn't notice anything else in the house hardly. They were so fixated on that wall. And what paint's easy, right? Paint, cover that up, no big deal. But it makes a difference. So don't make a buyer question anything in your home. You want it to be magazine worthy. You want it to be clean and cut. And because the other thing is they think about, was this home maintained? If they see little cracks, they see little things. Oh, they don't even fix, you know, a loose doorknob or a loose faucet. What else are they not maintaining? Maybe they didn't maintain their AC unit. Maybe they didn't maintain their plumbing, all that stuff. So next slide, we've got quick high ROI and low ROI, right? So return on investment. So if you're looking for things to do before you sell, paint, flooring touch-ups, and landscaping are going to be the biggest return on investment versus how little of a cost they can be and what it can raise for your curb appeal and for your, you know, interest for the buyer. Low ROI is going to be kitchen remodels, luxury upgrades, over customization, that, you know, beautiful, you know, thing you added to your house that like, this is the most beautiful, awesome thing I've ever seen. Well, that may not be the case for the buyer that's coming in for it. And so if you spend on luxury upgrades and luxury items, high expensive items, they won't necessarily return that value to you when you list the property. Also, a little tip, ask about remodeling programs. Most realtors know of some, and that will come in and they will upgrade your property or do all this stuff for you at a pretty decent cost, and then they won't charge you until closing either. So it's kind of a zero down way to spruce up your house, and then you don't pay till closing. So you never even had to pay for it, so to speak. Next up is disclosures. I like stopping down on this because here's where we get into state law and a lot of legal requirements for the seller. You must disclose any known defects on your property, any foundation work or issues that have ever been done, any roof issues that have been done, any plumbing, HVAC, water damage, insurance claims, prior repairs, or if you did any prior inspections. All of this must be disclosed in Texas. So this disclosure notice is like 11, 12 pages. And you can see by the little grid there, it's meticulous. You go through and you disclose everything you know. And so just a note on that. If you don't know it or you suspect it, but you're not sure, then you don't claim it. But it's just things that you do know that you have to put on there. Or it can obviously bite you pretty hard later on if it's something is discovered that you had knowledge of. After that is pricing strategy. I could spend an hour on pricing strategy alone. I've already talked about it a little bit, but it is the number one key to your success. So along with, and it looks like I copied some of the same bullet points here, but it's that spring summer mentality, and it's looking at the inventory levels. And it's also at the bottom there, I put be the no-brainer. So when I talk to my clients about selling, I said, I want to make your home the no-brainer in the neighborhood, so that if they see your house and they see 2 or 3 other houses next door, they're going to look at yours and be like, oh my gosh, this is the best value. This is the best bang for the buck. We're going to choose this house, right? And so you do that by the market analysis, the neighborhood analysis, and then looking at the active properties that are for sale. And so my pricing strategies are typically centered around that, where you're going to be looking at how do we come in at a very competitive rate compared to the neighborhood. Because I actually just came from a closing this morning, and I had that very conversation with my client, because she was like, well, I have this number in my head that I want, and I want it to be, 20, 30,000 over the number you told me. And I, had to be, with her and say, I totally understand. But at the same time, like, you could be really cutting off your foot, a little bit, because the attraction, the eyeballs, the feet in the door that you get on that first weekend is so paramount. And if you're overpriced to begin with, you're going to get low traction, low turnout. That turns into days on market. The longer your days on market, it's proven, the data shows you get a lower sales price the longer you're on the market. And so I had a lot of bites on this listing I had, and I agreed with her to go a little bit higher. And so I know that if we had been a little bit lower, we might have had a 3-4 offer situation. We still got an offer in less than a week, so it worked out. But just a little word to the wise, I've seen it time and time again. You want to make sure you lean into that data and lean into that listing price that agent is giving you as a market expert, because it can have massive impact on the sale of your home and what kind of leverage you have at the negotiating table. Because nothing's better than multiple offers, right? Seller holds all the cards. You get to pit them against each other. That is the gold standard and what you want for every single one of your sales. I'm going to skip this pretty quick, but really just a lot of marketing that increases your viewership, professional photography, videos. That's something I cover with all my clients and I pay for on my end, is making sure we got top-notch photography, videos, drones. Floor plans are huge. Buyers want to see floor plans. So please, please, please tell your photographer or realtor that you want a floor plan on yours. It's just a few bucks and buyers love it. It's going to bring more people to your property. Social media ads, open houses. I go door to door and I ask neighbors if they want to go to a sneak peek invite, because neighbors are nosy, as you're well aware, and they talk and they know people. Your neighbors are some of the best people to get in touch with about the sale of your home, because almost every neighborhood I go to, I have an aunt or a cousin or a mom or a grandma or somebody that is trying to move into that neighborhood, and they know somebody and know somebody that knows somebody. And you really get a lot of buzz around the home and in the neighborhood when you're letting neighbors know. So I've had huge success for that in the past, not to mention email campaigns, agent networks, broker opens, all of those kind of things. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 1 to 4 family contract. Again, I could go all day, but I really just want to let sellers know there's more to negotiate than just the price. There is what kind of financing they're bringing, what kind of option period they have, how many days they have, what kind of fee they pay for that, the earnest money that they put down as their good faith money, the closing date they select, the seller concessions, the lease back. Some of these things, sometimes time is worth more than money, right? And so a lease back or something could maybe take the place of a repair request or something like that. So there are so many items to negotiate. And so you just want to make sure that your agent is well versed with all of those terms and all of those items. I did a quick rundown of all of the buyer outs on the family contract on the next slide. And so I only put 20, but there's over 44 actually. And so the contract really favors buyers. It protects buyers because historically, of course, buyers have been taken advantage of in real estate transactions. So a lot of the laws that the Texas Real Estate Commission has put into place is to protect those buyers. So the buyers have about 44 different outs where they can get out of the contract scot-free. And so this is not an exhaustive list, but it's a lot. It's from the loan getting denied, their termination option is the big one, material information is discovered, buyer objections aren't met, or they didn't receive a form, they didn't receive the disclosure. There's a lot of ways for them to get out. But on the next slide, we look at how many can the seller get out of? How many opportunities does the seller have? One, mainly the buyer default. They fail to pay their earnest money, they fail to pay their option fee, they fail to close on time, or they breach the contract in some other way. But then there's also some buyer controlled outs where they don't get their financing, both parties are released, or if there's casualty loss, which is obviously not what you're hoping for, which means, if it got burned down or hit by a tornado or something, then both parties are released as well. So there's really, as a seller, you're pretty much handcuffed to the deal after you sign it, which is important to know. So I mentioned all those things just because you want to make sure that your realtor is aware of all of those outs. And as a listing agent, you're going to want to protect your seller and make sure that buyer has, as few outs as possible in, with as much as we can control. Costs of selling, like I said at the beginning, this is probably one of my biggest questions. What does it cost to sell your home? Well, first and foremost, after you get your lump sum of cash from your amazing sale, you're going to have your mortgage loan payoff. So whatever you owe there, you're going to have your real estate fees. That's probably one of the biggest fees because you're paying in Texas, it's tradition to the seller will pay for the buyer and the seller's real estate fees. Now, that is obviously up for negotiation, but 99% of the time, sellers paying for both sides. And so that's something, obviously, I talk about right up front when I have my first meeting with sellers to make them aware of what everything will cost them. We're going to have some owner's title insurance to pay, but also can be negotiated. HOA fees also can be negotiated. But you also have a property tax credit. Some sellers forget about this. If you're selling your home in February, well, then you're going to have to pay the buyer for March through December for the taxes, because obviously taxes are paid in arrears. And so therefore that buyer will be paying the full year come December. And obviously they'll be the ones owning the home at that time. So you'll have to pay them for the time that you were there. So I think I might have said that backwards. You're paying them for January and February, and then obviously they were there the rest of the year, so they'll pay for that piece. So that can be a small or large amount depending on what time of the year you're selling. And then there's repairs and seller's concessions as well that you have to pay out if that was negotiated to get the deal out of option. Mistakes to avoid. So I think you could probably guess my number one mistake is don't overprice. Do not overprice your home. I've seen it time and time again where if you come in at market value or even just under, you're going to get multiple eyes, multiple offers, and then that will bump you up higher than probably your high listing price would have been. Or especially if time is an issue. If time is an issue, then obviously you want to make that price as attractive as possible to move the property quickly. Again, neglecting home preparation. I can't tell you how many times I've been in before photos and I'm like making beds and I'm pulling, brooms and mops and just things out of the way. So just make sure you've really got your home prepared and staged correctly. The seller's disclosure is a big one. You really need to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. And we've had to make some changes sometimes when we've found out something or the seller remembered something midway through the transaction. Poor photography, getting just like the cheapest, easiest package or whatnot can hurt, or not marketing online. Limited access to showings. This is one I have to fight for sometimes. When the seller is like, well, I'm home during the day, so I only want to do, my showings from 7 to 8 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays or something like that. Okay, well, you're not giving the market a whole lot of time to view the property. And again, I said, you want as many eyeballs and as many feet in the door as possible. So you want to make that home available, especially in that first week. I even encourage my sellers, I'm like, just go have a vacation. Like go get a hotel, go somewhere else, go out of town, and let the first 3 days, especially, or the first week, if possible, to be wide open, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all day, every day for sellers, for buyers to come through and check out the home. Moving on to the next, that's about wraps it up. Yeah, that's about the end of it. I think I came in right on time. And so I put this page up here just so you know, really at the bottom right-hand corner is the QR code. I just want to make sure you have that QR code. Obviously, my phone number and email is there as well, and I respond to text the best and the most quickly. But you can also use that QR code to go to all of my social media accounts, or do a Zoom call with me. You can schedule a call through there, or just look at my latest listings, all that good stuff. And always happy to answer a question.
Yeah, unmute myself. Thank you, Brandon. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but I did take notes while both of you were speaking because I am not a homeowner myself yet, but hopefully will be sooner than later. So now we're going to roll into the Q&A session here, which is always my favorite portion. All right. So I know some questions were in chat, and I know Evie got to some of them during as they were going here. The first question we have is maybe a loaded question, and I'll let either of you take it. They want to know, will housing prices continue to decline, and how is the current transaction volume?
Well, I'll give you my reaction to prices continue to drop. I would say most likely not. I think you can look at financial projections through a lot of there's a lot of financial analytic companies that'll give you their take on like Freddie Mac and all of those big, financial corporations will give you their projections for the year. If you look at, and I almost put a slide on this, if you have if you look at basically have home prices increased or decreased like over the last 50 years, you'll see that 2025, we took about a 2% dip in price. So a price decrease, I guess. The last one was 2008, of course. And the one before that was like 1988, 1989 with gas crisis and stuff going on in the 80s. So that's the only 3 times it's dipped. And every time it has dipped, it's gone back up for the next 5-10 years. So obviously none of us know the future, but using history as a guide, I would tell you that after this little 2025 dip, we are most likely going to see at least a maybe 0.5%, 1%, 2% gain on price. But the historical average, if you look at it from the last 100 years, the historical average is about 3% per year. So homes are a long-term investment. So if you have your home a long time, you can expect a pretty solid gain for the time that you have it, for sure. And timing the market, I would always advise against timing the market. If you're like, oh, I'm going to wait till sales dip, or I'm going to wait for this specific time to hit it. Just like the stock market, it's like you can be advantageous, but it can also bite you as well. We have a saying that the best time to buy is yesterday, and the next best time to buy was 10 years ago, right? So you want to get in on ownership basically as quick as you possibly can.
Thanks, Brandon. Abby, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think, Brandon, you said it. Oh, I think it took me off. Okay,
There we go.
perfect. Thank you. I think, Brandon, you said it well, but I do want to add, I do think even though we might not see home prices declining, what's called seller concessions is rising. I was reading from Redfin the other day, 33% of sellers are offering seller concessions. So yes, you might be married to that sales price, but let's break it down into what that would look like from a closing perspective. And if that's something that you're not comfortable with, that's why we have that part of the offer letter that we talked about in the presentation. So I wouldn't let the price of the home daunt you. I think that's the perfect to reach out to Brandon or I and have that conversation, and how can we get it to a number that you're comfortable with. So yes, prices may be going on the rise, but let's keep in mind also seller concessions too. I think sellers are aware of that. And at the end of the day, we all are meeting the same goal. They're selling their home. The buyer wants to purchase the home. How can we find a nice marriage between the two?
Thank you both. We had a set of 3 questions, and Abby, I know you answered some of them. Some of them I'm going to take too. First question was, what are their time on job requirements, preferences that lenders like to see when buying a home? Abby and Brandon are not lenders; they are realtors. They are partners in the process. Texans would be the lender. So to answer this question, all lenders, there are very specific requirements we must follow. That will not change from lender to lender. However, there are some nuances that lenders may have their own control over and will differ lender to lender. So I suggest you speak directly to your lender, and most mortgage lenders you can speak to at no cost to ask these types of questions without signing paperwork or getting ready to buy in the process. And trust me, as lenders, we love these types of questions up front before you start the process, because it'll make the whole process smoother for you at that point. So then you can jump into the realtor process and then get your home closed as quickly as possible. So great question. Another one was different loan types, and typically which ones are more beneficial for the buyer. Again, each lender is going to have their own programs. Some have first-time homebuyer programs, like Texans does. And there may be other programs in your area, so you'll want to ask about those specific programs, because again, this is your home. It's unique to your situation. What worked for your mom, your dad, your brother, your neighbor, your friend down the road won't work necessarily for you, and you may not qualify for the same things that they qualify for. You may get something more tailored to your situation that will be better for you. So those are great questions to ask. And of course, the joke is the best loan type for the buyer is the one you get approved. So that's the joke in the industry for that. And then this question, I'm actually really interested to hear from both Ebby and Brandon, because I have also not heard of this, but this individual has gone through a lot of open houses, and that's great. I wish I had the time to do that. I do most of mine virtual. But they were asked at one home to sign a document called a residential buyer slash tenant representation agreement. And this was the first time for them. I have never heard of this document either. Can both of you talk to why that came up and what that document is and what it does?
Yeah, so I don't know that I've heard of that in an open house. That's not something I do to people in an open house, but typically, so that document came up as a result of the big lawsuit that happened a couple years back. It changed a lot of the verbiage and a lot of the way that Texas just discloses everything. It's a lot of the same things we were always doing, but they just want more disclosure. So one of the things they did was they added, okay, before an agent can take a human into a house, you have to sign an agreement, whether that's a one-day agreement, a one-house agreement, whatever it is. You have to sign that piece of paper before you walk in the door so that the buyer is educated on who you are, what kind of services you provide, and what fees you charge. Like, all that has to be up front before you take them into a house, which was not done in the past, obviously. So I think it's maybe taken it to a maybe more of an extreme degree, at least from my perspective, that you would ask anyone in an open house to do so, because open houses just were not covered, to my understanding, under that document. So I think that's what the agent's trying to do. They're trying to get an agreement in place for you to see the home that day, but that's not my understanding of how that form needs to be used. I don't know if you've heard of that. Ebby, have you heard of that on open houses?
I've never been to an open house where you need a buyer rep. That's kind of sometimes the beauty too, I guess, if you don't want to be connected to a realtor yet and look at the house, anybody can go to an open house, which is the beauty of it. And I think you said it best too, talking about the buyer rep. I'm a huge advocate for it too, because my mom always taught me to read. When we're looking at the buyer rep agreement, it's beautiful. It outlines the realtor's duties as well to the buyer. So you can almost kind of get a clear lens on what we are expected to do from a legal perspective as realtors. So I think that's nice to have handy. And then it's also nice when you have that signed, you know that this realtor, whether it's property specific or city specific or one day specific, this person has to advocate on your behalf. So kind of having that cheerleader that's also legally bounded to that cheerleading and advocating, I think it's a great safety net. So I'm a big pro of the buyer rep agreement, but if you want to go look at an open house, I've never heard of that. So you don't, I haven't, even when I host open houses, I haven't seen a buyer rep, so you're okay.
Awesome. Thank you both. I learned something new today. Actually, I learned several new things today, but that was a big one for me. Some other questions.
I was going to say, you came to one of my open houses. I did not make you sign a buyer rep.
No, you did not.
Look around, enjoy.
No, you did not.
Yes, enjoy.
There are some other questions coming through. One person asked, is there anything for veterans on the selling side? So I'm guessing this person is asking if there's any benefits or programs available for veterans outside the VA loan.
I don't know. I know, obviously, yeah, the VA loan, and then I think on the selling side, I wouldn't say there's anything off the top of my head that I know of. Maybe Ebby might, but it's for me, I know the VA and there's so much assistance there, and so I was like, reach out to them directly, because I think there are a ton of programs, relocation programs, and where they help out in a lot of ways, but I don't. Off the top of my head, I don't know anything directly that they do considering the specific sale of the property.
I will piggyback off that, and I'm going to bring back our word that we talked about earlier about advocates. That's our question. That's when we're going to lean on our lender advocate to access that. I do not keep a strong memory of loans. I can say some off back, but that's why we have those and they're specific. So I would connect us with some of my favorite lenders, and they can let us know too, because there's no bad questions. That's an appropriate question for our lender advocate.
All right, another question popped up. What do either of you have experience with something called hip pocket sales?
So yeah, I think they're referring to like off-market property or a pocket listing. And so those are essentially off-market deals and so I've done this a handful of times where I'll have a seller that doesn't want to go out public. They don't want to put everything out there. They don't want to open their home to thousands of people. So they'll ask to do it off market. And so there's definitely a few different ways we can do that. My brokerage has an entire network, and I'm pretty sure all the other big brokerages do as well, where we have kind of a private list of just all of our listings and all of our buyers and all that stuff. And then so we can insert a pocket listing into that and say, hey, who in our sphere has interest in this property, and try to get it sold that way, or just going door to door and letting neighbors know, doing that whole thing. Or I've had buyers or sellers in the past that want the property gone, right? And they just want someone to come in. So I have a list of investors that I use. They'll come in, kick the tires, give them a cash offer, and they're like, hey, that works for me, and they're out. So I believe that's the term he's referring to. And so, yeah, a realtor can definitely help you if that's your goal, to be off market, to be out of the public, or to just get something done quick and easy and clean. There are options for that with those pocket listings.
I'm loving a lot of these really direct questions in the Q&A in the chat that are coming in, like specifically for Ebby, specifically for Brandon. I'm very glad that all of you attending found such great information in all these questions. For those more direct questions, I won't bring them on camera just because these are going to be unique to you. But you see on the screen now, I have listed both Brandon and Ebby's direct contact information. So for those more nuanced or more in-depth questions that y'all have, you can directly reach out to them. I'm sure they would love to talk to you even further, but I'm not going to bring those onto screen here. And I just say that just because we also are pressed for time too, and I want to get through as much as we can, but I don't want to air everybody's personal stuff out here as well. You may be okay with that, but there are certain things we have to follow here as well. Next question this is actually a really good question. There's a lot of good questions today. They want to know, instead of making multiple updates to a home, is it better to throw an amount to pay the buyer to make their own improvements?
Could you repeat that question? Was it if a buyer to just throw money out as a concession for buyer improvements?
It sounds like they're asking, instead of this, the current owner making all these updates to their home and they want to sell it, is it better just to throw in an amount, I guess, as a concession, to pay the new buyer to make their own improvements to the home? So should I improve my home now, or should I just give some money or take money off the sale cost to give to the buyer?
So I would say you always want to do whatever work you can up front rather than leaving something undone or leaving something broken. I would do that kind of thing. But if it is maybe in the option period and the buyer says, hey, we want this fixed, this fixed, this fixed, and this fixed, you can just give a concession and say, all right, we'll just give you three grand to do all that stuff or whatever. And in fact, whenever I do my repair negotiations, I always write two separate ones, and I'll write one that says, hey, seller has to fix A, B, C, D. And then I'll write a second one that says, in lieu of A, B, C, D, seller gives a concession of X amount of dollars. And then I'll hand that over to the other agent. I'm like, which way you want to go with it? As a seller, you typically want to go with the concession, but both are possible.
I like how you do the two repair negotiations in lieu of. I like that.
Yeah, I think all parties concerned, especially for the buyer, it's better for there to be a concession, because when you start talking about repairs, the lenders get involved because they want to see what kind of repairs they are. You got to wait for the repairs to be done. So I'm definitely, buyer or seller, I'm pushing for a concession. That's just going to be the cleaner way to get through the transaction.
I agree.
So. Another question, I'll take this one, guys. This is more of a lender side question. This person who has been a longtime member of Texans, and I'm going to call that out and be like, thank you so much for your over 30 plus years of membership. We appreciate that. they want to know if they can you get pre-approved without having an agent? I'm going to guess there's meaning a real estate agent. Yes, you can get pre-approved before having an agent lined up. I have heard, and Ebby and Brandon can correct me if I'm wrong, just heard through chitter chatter in the grapevine in the community that realtors would prefer that you have your financing ready to go when you start the process of looking for your home. Um, I tend to kind of agree with this in a little bit just because homes can go fast. And if you really find a home that you really want, you don't have any financing there, time is not on your side. But yes, we can get pre-approvals. Texans does offer pre-approvals just like multiple other financial institutions. And on our website, you can actually schedule time with our mortgage loan officers, either to start the process to pre-approval, or if it's just like, hey, I have more questions about the financing process. I'm not quite ready yet. What can you do to help me, and what can I do to prepare? Before and so when I'm ready to go, I have everything lined up. They love answering those questions, and there's no charge to meet with them, and you do not have to be a member to meet with one of our mortgage loan officers either. But if you take a Texans Credit Union mortgage, you will have to become a member. Just putting that out there, which we serve the entire state of Texas here at Texans Credit Union. So.
Well, and I'll add on to that picking your lender is by far one of the most important things. That they can absolutely make or break a deal. I've had to change lenders mid-transaction because of that, and it's not something you want to go through as a buyer or a seller. It could ruin the house that you are going to get. And so, yes, make sure you have a trusted source like Texans or someone else, because the trust, for me, I tell my clients all the time, the trust trumps the mortgage rate. In most cases, right? Obviously, we're looking at the mortgage rate as some financial, stability in the future. But there's a lot of lenders and a lot of websites and a lot of call centers in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, that will show you this cheap rate, and your eyes get big. You're like, oh, here we go. I'm going to save so much money. But then they don't have a clue what's going on. You can't call them, you can't reach them, and then you're stuck with them, and it's a mess. So yes, please go with a trusted source like Texans, because you'll be grateful for it when you get to the closing table with no issues.
All right, and one last question before we wrap up here. Question is asking, do either of you have any information on how to request further information on any remodeling programs that may be available in their area?
A remodeling program?
Yeah, if they're mentioning the one that like I mentioned on one of my slides, like I have a couple of companies that I've just met over the years, and they do that kind of upfront, like I was mentioning, remodeling. So you would your realtor should know of them. So like whoever you know should have a connection there. Again, that's where like the connection of your realtor is so huge, because you want trusted people working on your house, right, and doing the construction. So just make sure you vet those companies. But there are several in the industry, and if you just do some Google searches, you can find remodel home before closing or remodel home before selling, stuff like that. And you'll find companies that'll give you this opportunity to remodel now and pay at the closing table. You just want to make sure you find one you trust.
I was going to say too, I know, we're in Richardson. I talked about Leadership Richardson earlier. I know the city has a program in the past. I don't know if it's still there, but some cities or counties may offer a program. So I would check the local city website, the local county website. Just make sure that you're dealing directly with a professional and reputable source. We don't want anybody to sign up for something and then be left holding, a bag of goods that they can't do anything with. So always protect yourself from scammers, and we have a webinar about that too. Beyond that, again, thank you to Ebby and Brandon for being here. We so appreciate this. This was a very talked about and popular webinar. To summarize some of the things I heard, just a reminder for everyone here, please use a professional realtor. It sounds like from either end, buying the home or selling the home, they are on your side. They are your BFF. They are your advocate. So pick one you can trust. If you find one that you like and please refer them out as well. They referrals are great, and Texans also, we love referrals here too. You can find realtors, they are everywhere. But if you really want to find one that can help, it's always best to use your local chamber of commerce as a reference source. Ebby and Brandon are both members of the local Richardson Chamber, as is Texans, and if they don't have any realtors at the chamber, they can help you find one in your area. So it's a great resource for that there. I did think of one question because it's my own personal question. I totally forgot because I wanted to make sure our members got taken care of first. What is your opinion, Ebby and Brandon, on using websites to find homes, such as like homes.com, realtor.com, zillow.com? Is it, I mean, are those good sources, bad sources, or is it best to go through like the local realtors page to look at inventory? That's a no personal question for me.
Yes. Well, okay, I'll kick it off. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at those third-party sites. I do. Like it's beautiful. You have these homes that are available at your fingertips to look through. And also too, I can't dictate what Josh does when he goes home. If you're scrolling and you say, I want to look at a pretty house in Zillow, you go and do that. I encourage you. I also think it kind of builds excitement. I think the beauty of it though, when you talk with your realtor, is like how can we make that like that you did on Zillow a reality. So I still use those platforms. I think it's nice to look at. And a lot of our homes that we are able to advertise, we use it through our third-party system, and it flows into those Zillow's, Redfin's homes. So no, I will never discourage. I've had somebody look at a Zillow and loved it so much and was like, okay, I'm ready to talk about the home buying process. So I'm an advocate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Brandon, I think you're muted.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the advantage of those sites is that they're so easy to use and they're so easy to navigate. And so, yeah, they're often better than maybe what we send you through the MLS. I say the only disadvantage is I know I can set up sometimes more custom searches for my clients, and I can make sure they get automated emails ASAP. And that's the biggest thing, especially on the buyer side, is that when a property hits your search, you want that email ASAP so you can go look at it and maybe make an offer before anyone else does. So I'd say that's the disadvantage to only using the sites. You won't have that speed to market like you do when you're looking at the MLS stuff. But I'm with Ebby. Like majority of my clients and me myself will start going through Zillow or Realtor. Or I'm a big fan of homes.com as well. I like their layout and their functionalities. But you just lose that speed to market is all. But they're great to use.
Awesome. And again, I saw a lot of Q&A and chat about the mortgage process here. So I'm going to plug my own team because it's my webinar. But here are our mortgage officers. They are local. They are here at Richardson at our 75 and Campbell location on the first floor. You guys can walk in and meet with them or schedule an appointment time. I do encourage you to schedule an appointment time with them just because they're like everybody's schedules. It's crazy busy. And same thing with realtors. Our realtor partners, book an appointment with them. It's just going to be a lot easier, and you get a reminder so you don't forget either when you do the appointment thing. So just wanted to share that with them. And again, Ebby and Brandon's information was on the screen earlier. When this is recorded and on YouTube, it will be there for y'all too. My information was also on there, so if you missed it or if you want to, you didn't write down their information, you guys can contact me and we'll get you in touch with both of them, myself. But we are so grateful for everyone who attended today. I know we went a little over our hour, a lot of great information, lots of great questions. We look forward to being at the next webinar. Ebby and Brandon, I hope in the future we can do maybe split this up and do more in-depth on the buying and selling process. Maybe we do a road trip with both of you and we're just going around being like, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. I don't know, sky's the limit. It's just my ideas here. But thank you both for being here today, giving us your time. We hope to see you guys again. And for everyone out there, have a wonderful rest of your week. And we hope to see you more soon. Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thanks, Josh. Thank y'all.